adults and a geriatrician, which means I take care of older adults as well. I trained at Temple University Hospital, and then I went on to do a fellowship in geriatrics at the Hospital of University of Pennsylvania. I did my undergrad at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and my medical training at St. Louis at Washington University. During the pandemic, I noticed a lot of the people who were dying were the elderly, and I wanted to try to reverse that trend by coming up with different health systems, alternatives to care for the elderly instead of a nursing home. So I went back to Drexel and got a master's in health administration and just finished that this past summer. And then went on to start a nonprofit called Aging Well at Home. So today we're going to talk about how to live healthy in 2024 and beyond. Okay. So the question whenever I do these talks, I like to have everyone just ask the question, do you consider yourself to be healthy? Just think about that. So that'll be the question we're asking in the beginning. And then as we go through the talk, you'll be able to have that answer at the end. So what you should learn. So you want to learn that there's 3 stressors on the human body. So we're going to talk about at least 3 of them tonight. The health benefits of fruits and vegetables, and then how to exercise. Now, I always like starting out with a story. So I had a patient, she was, her name, I could mention her name, she was my piano teacher, and she's now deceased. She was 85 years old, and I remember when I went to see her, I was doing a home visit as a house call physician. I didn't take her insurance, so I didn't want to abandon her, so I told her I would barter with her. So I said, you teach my son, Joshua, who at the time was like 6, you teach him piano, I'll give you health care. So she had been playing the piano for like 70 years. And she was from Russia. Very wonderful woman. So she turned me on to juicing and vegetables, and she said she doesn't take any medicines. And she started juicing after she was diagnosed with gallstones in her 40s. And that's because when she came to America, she started to adopt the American diet. So she ate a lot of hot dogs and ended up with a gallbladder attack, and they wanted to take her gallbladder out. She said no. So she changed her eating habits, and she started to eat more fruits and vegetables. So and she lived to be 85. So I thought that was good. So in the beginning, the Bible says in Genesis 2:7 that God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. So God created this complex body just like that. I just think that's so amazing. So let's see. Okay. Let me get used to this. Okay. Here. And then the Bible also talks about how the body is equated to the temple of God. So it says in 2 Corinthians 6:16 that what agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. So God calls our bodies temples, which means we should take care of them. So I'm always encouraging people who smoke not to smoke. I had a woman today come in the office. She's only 39, and before I entered the room, I could smell the cigarettes. And so I asked her, do you want to stop smoking? She said she's tried, but she's very stressed out. And so I encouraged her that she needs to have a stop date and then commit herself to stopping on that date. So this is a picture of the human body. I like this picture, this image, because it shows both the skeletal side of the human body, and then the other side is muscle. So most of our body is water on the inside, but we have this frame. And the skeleton is really just designed to kind of hold things together, but we put a lot of stress on that skeleton in the form of weight. Like if we weigh too much, then we put a lot of force on our knees. And then I have patients coming in saying they have knee pain, then they start getting the injections, and then unfortunately they end up with knee replacements and so forth. And then I encourage them to lift weights. And they look at me like shocked. I said, no, your body was intended to be held together with this frame called the skeleton, but it's to hold the force of whatever we do, whether we're walking or running, is to be carried by the muscles. So you have to go to the gym or bring your gym to home. And you have to know how to, which exercise to do. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we move along. Okay. So the stresses on the human body. So this was one of the first objectives. So these are three right here. Diabetes, obesity, or having that, I like to say, a weight challenge, and alcohol overuse. So we're going to talk a little bit about diabetes. Then there were two other stressors that I added, depression and aging. So aging, believe it or not, is a stressor on the human body. So there are ways you can try to counteract that. Okay. So when we talk about diabetes, there's two types. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes is when you don't make any insulin, which is the protein in the body that we need to use glucose or energy that we extract from food. Then there's type 2 diabetes, which is the one that pretty much what we're talking about in adults, that we hear a lot in the press, and that involves insulin resistance. So insulin resistance and diabetes, what does that mean? Well, I liken it to a car. So I have a 2012 Kia Sorento. Yes, it's 11 years old, but I'm going to run it into the ground because I don't have a car payment. So, but anyway, I had it filled up with gas one day, and I was driving home from work, and I was at the light, and then it just stopped. I was like, oh no. So I had it rolled over to the parking space, and then I turned the key, so the lights came on, but the car wasn't turning over. So the bottom line is the problem was a starter. So type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance is like that, which means, so our car, our body, even though you have a full tank of gas, can't operate if the starter is broke. So with insulin resistance, you can say that's like having a broken starter. So you can be eating as much as you want, but if the insulin can't cause you to utilize the food, utilize the energy you're extracting from the food, then unfortunately you develop diabetes. And so as a result of that, then you have type 2 diabetes. So let's keep going. So glucose and insulin, how they work together. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So when you eat food, you extract glucose. That's the sugar that people talk about. But it's not sugar in the sense of a donut or the granulated sugar or the cane sugar that you put in coffee or tea. It's the energy that we extract from food. And so that energy goes into all these different organs. You've got the lungs up at the top, your top right-hand corner. You've got the heart. You've got the kidneys, which are down at the bottom. And all these parts of our body have a role. And in order to in order for those organs to function, they need glucose. In order for the glucose to enter these organs, then you need insulin. So in type 2 diabetes, you have insulin, but the insulin doesn't work because of this insulin resistance. So we call it the insulin receptor. So it's malfunctioned. So now you've got all this glucose floating around in the blood, and so when people are initially diagnosed with diabetes, they'll typically come in saying they're urinating more often than usual, which is a patient I had today. They're also more thirsty than usual, and then they're eating more than usual, but still feel hungry after they eat. They still feel hungry because they haven't been able to utilize the glucose that they're extracting from the food. And that's because of this insulin resistance. Another way to look at it is, this is of course a screen on your laptop. So the only way you can access Google or your applications on the laptop is to, is to have a password. So in insulin resistance, the password that you're trying to use is the wrong one. So you're not able to gain, the glucose can't gain entrance into the organs because of this insulin resistance. So this is a case. So this is a real case. I had to modify the details a little bit, but it's a 73-year-old woman. She presents to the office for medication refills. She has type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and then we call chronic kidney disease, which means her kidneys don't work too well. And the kidney disease is probably from the high blood pressure and diabetes. And she only comes to the office once a year to get blood work and medication refills. That's it. She told me that. I met her for the first time. So the question is, what is wrong with this case? A, the patient only comes to the office once a year. B, the patient does not understand her medical conditions, or C, both A and B. So with the show of hands, how many people think it's just A? Okay, how many people think it's just B? And how many people think it's C? Yeah, exactly. So one of the problems with our mindset, now I'm speaking in terms of African Americans, is that we kind of leave our health up to chance or fate. It's not uncommon for me to hear people say, if it's your time, it's your time. I hear that, and I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be. We can actually be a little bit more proactive and really try to get an understanding, like with these health talks, of what actually is going around with this complex machine or creation that God has given us. Okay. Yes?
So with the A, B, and C, shouldn't there be a D? Because I'm thinking the doctor should make her, before filling her prescriptions once a year, twice a year, shouldn't the doctor require her to come in more often? Right.
So I inherited this practice, so that was the mindset of the previous docs. They usually gave everybody a 1-year supply, and so we changed it, so I said no. So she knows that she has to come back. So, right, so that's exactly right. So right at the beginning, when the doctor establishes that relationship with the patient, there should be some rules. And so one is, typically with diabetics, you really want to see them once every 3 to 6 months. And 6 months is really pushing it, but if the person is very compliant and their hemoglobin A1C, which is the number we use to try to gauge what your blood sugars have been in the previous 3 months, is less than 7, then you can probably go as far as 6 months. But most people, it's every 3 months. And we do blood work at that time, and we really try to understand how they're doing with their diet and their medications. So what about diabetes medications that cause weight loss? So I hear all the commercials, Wegovy, Ozempic, those are all GLP-1 agonists. So they're glycogen-like peptide medications, which basically means they try to make the glucose that you take in be stored as glycogen, which is okay. and then the body can use it. And in doing that, those medications suppress appetite, and then you just lose weight. And you can lose a significant amount. So if you weighed 200 pounds, you could lose like 10 pounds in 6 months. If you weigh 300 pounds, you could lose like 15 pounds in 6 months, which may not seem a lot, but it actually is. If you're going to lose weight, you really want to try to lose like half a pound to a pound a week. You really don't want to do one of these yo-yo diets where you're losing like 20 pounds in 2 weeks or something. You're less likely to keep it off. You're more likely to regain it and probably regain more than what you started. So what about overweight and obesity? So this is going to lead to our next part of our talk about stressors, and it's obesity and overweight. So we use in the office a BMI, body mass index, and we use this cutoff of like 30. And that's how we calculate it. We take your weight, we put it in a metric measurement of kilograms, and we divide it by your height in meters. And then we come up with this number. So if it's more than 30, you're overweight, and if it's like above 40, we call it morbid obesity. I don't like the terminology, so I usually say weight challenge, or we're trying to help you manage your weight. But these are the medical terms we use. When it gets above 40, like today I had a patient who had one that was like probably 50. You start thinking about surgery. And that's when you start thinking about bariatric surgery, which is the gastric bypass and gastric sleeve. But usually doctors like you to try to incorporate better eating habits and exercise. But sometimes when patients are just so heavy where it's very difficult for them to exercise, we usually recommend surgery. I always treat patients with respect. The heaviest patient I had was 700 pounds. And she couldn't get out of the house, so I did a house call. And eventually, at age 50, her kidneys started to go and her heart started to go, and I had to call an ambulance. And I felt bad to have to do that because, unfortunately, the fire people weren't professional because they had to use a lot of men to get her out the house. Actually had to use a crane. And but that's how bad it can get. And she said she didn't want me to call the ambulance, but I said, you're going to die if you don't. You're very sick. So she let me call. And I believe the hospital kept her this time and did the surgery. It's a challenge to lose that kind of weight. So this picture I like because it shows variety of fruits and vegetables. So really I want to encourage you to, if you take nothing from this talk, just think 5 and 5. 5 fruits, 5 vegetables a day. A serving is usually a cup. So how do you do that practically? If we lived in certain countries like we learned at the missions conference where meat was a luxury, then your diet would consist of fruits and vegetables. Or if you lived in like Greece or something like that. But we're in America, so we actually have a lot of choices. So I would encourage people to make smoothies and to use a juicer. So what I do is I have a juicer, and I went to the blender, and I first made a shake. So I have almond milk, some yogurt, so I get my calcium. Then I add a banana. I use frozen strawberries, peaches, a little honey, and then I just mix it all together and I drink it. And now that's 3 servings of fruit right there. And you just drink it. It's easy. Then I leave it in the refrigerator, and then when I have a snack at night, I just go down and I reach for that blender rather than for the chips. See, so before we move on, the exercise that we're going to do is some of the people that are in person, and John, if you could help out and just give this to the lady in the back and the man in the back, you can take a couple of these. Here you go. Everybody gets a tape measure. Okay, this is how you check your waist circumference that we just talked about. So the magic number is roughly 32 for women, and I believe it's 35 for men. So you go, you feel the bottom of your ribs, and you go to, you can start now. You go, you stand up, you feel the bottom of your ribs, and you go to your, and you go where your top of your hips are. So right around, then you find your belly button. Once you find the belly button, you take the tape measure, you bring it around, that's your waist now, and you try to bring it in just a little bit, but not enough where you have to hold your breath, and you get your number. And so I did this today, and I was like, whoa. I said, is that correct? So like mine was 40. So that's too much. So I kept doing it over and over and over again. So you don't have to share your number, but you need to know so you can keep it. You can keep these tape measures so you can know as you make these new attempts on living healthy for 2024 and beyond, that you, I say probably once a month, check your waistline and see if you're going down. Yep, so that's how you measure. So pretty much you're putting the tape measure around where your belly button is. And that number, for women, it's supposed to be like 31.5 inches. Yeah. So I said, boy, that seems too small. Yeah, but I think the point of it is that you want to see the number go down. So the new thought process now in terms of weight loss is not so much the absolute number as much as you want to see a lifestyle change and a gradual loss of the inches around the waist and the weight. Okay. So there, in the Mayo Clinic, there are 6 strategies for success, and then follow these proven strategies to reduce your weight and boost your health. So one of the strategies is the fruits and vegetables. Another strategy is drinking lots of water. So when you drink like the 8-ounce glasses of water, or 64 ounces a day, which is like 2 quarts of water, then you're going to feel full. When you feel full, you're not going to want to eat. So I think that's the premise there. So it's a good idea to get a water bottle, like you have that fountain out there now where we use our water bottle. You just fill it up and just keep drinking all day and be near a bathroom. And that should help you lose weight. So now moving on to alcohol. So I had a patient come in. Do I have it on here? This is case 2. So in the Bible it says, do not, and be not drunk with wine wherein is excess, Ephesians 5:18. So the Bible doesn't condemn drinking because, at the wedding, when Christ changed water into wine, that was his first miracle. But excess is a problem. So I had a patient, again, a real case, 56-year-old man, came in for his annual physical exam, and he stated that he drank. I said, do you drink alcohol? He said, yes. I said, how much? He said, just a little bit. I said, okay, what's a little bit? And he said, 6 beers. I said, how often? He said, a day. I said, okay. So the question is, what is wrong with this patient? So, right, so he's drinking too much, right? So now, alcoholic. So I don't know if it's an alcoholic or we want to say alcohol use disorder, or he thinks that this is okay. So you have to look at the cultural context. So he's of a different culture, and when I realized that, I said in his culture, drinking is okay. So I told him all the health problems that can result from drinking that much alcohol. So one is dementia. So when I said dementia or the loss of memory, it resonated with him, and he understood. So I said, why don't we compromise? Why don't we go to 2 a day? I said, it's still a little bit too much. The recommendation is 1, but it's better than 6. So we did some shared decision-making, and I suggested, and I told him a story. So I do house calls, as I mentioned, and I had a 56-year-old man who I went to his house. He was already in diapers. He had lost his memory, and his girlfriend was taking care of him. She said, "Is there anything else you could do for him?" I said, "No, damage is done. There's nothing more I can do for him." Okay, so the next stressor, I like this picture. I always think of this, Lucy, and she's playing a psychiatrist, and she says, "Okay, the doctor is in." It was really in. So mental illness is really a big stressor, particularly depression. I've had patients come in, particularly men. They'll come in with either depression, or they'll come in with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and they want to be diagnosed with that, and they're adults. And I'll say, first off, I commend them for coming in, and then secondly, I help them get treatment. So treating mental illness, particularly in the African American community, is very important. I used to work at the Philadelphia jail. I was a director of the infirmary there for a few years, and I was responsible for the forensic psychiatric unit as well, working with the psychiatrist. And to see the outcomes of untreated mental illness is quite devastating. And so that really is really very important to treat mental illness, and that actually, mental illness is considered a stressor on the human body. Then the last thing is aging. So this is my sort of my passion. So helping us age successfully. So I've worked in nursing homes, and if you have to go, then I understand it. I totally do, because I know about caregiver stress. But if you can avoid it, it would be a good thing. So how do you try to age at home? So one way to age at home is to stay out of a hospital. So I used to work in a hospital, did that for several years, and I took care of a lot of older adults. And the hospitals are just not set up to take care of older adults. They're just not. The ER, no. So I had a patient. She lived in South Philadelphia, and she had very bad eyesight. And so much so that she wore these big glasses with thick lenses. So I did a house call, and I found her one day, short of breath, sent her to the hospital. She had pneumonia. We treated her for pneumonia. And just on the day of discharge, we realized that the IV that was put in her caused her to have an infection in her arm. So she was kept in the hospital for like a couple of days. Anyway, she didn't realize that she wasn't at home. So she got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, got out of her hospital bed, fell and broke her hip. Then they wheeled her down to get the x-ray the next day. And unfortunately, when they were transferring her to the stretcher, to the bed, they dropped her. So then she fractured her ribs. So we had a broken hip, fractured ribs. She died in 6 months. So, this is it. So you really, if you can, you want to try to keep people at home. This citation from the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry talks about, I like this, stress, inflammation, and aging, how aging itself, it does occur. And if we can try to avoid some of these, this is what occurs, multiple losses with aging. So we lose our independence, we can lose our cognition or our thinking, financial losses, as we age, we have a fixed income, but we live in an apartment and now the rent's going up. Psychosocial, so now your world gets smaller and smaller because maybe you can't drive anymore and you can't get to that social function that you normally would go to. So now you're isolated, or your peers, unfortunately, have passed on. So all these are stresses on our body. And so one way to age successfully is to think ahead. So one way is to have an advance directive, so a living will. And so I'm always talking about that. So we plan for living and we plan for retirement, but we don't plan for death. But we need to, because everybody has an expiration date. So it's just, what it is. So you want to have a living will. So you want to, basically that means if you're not able to make decisions for yourself, that you have a plan in place, or you've had that conversation with your loved ones about what you would and would not want done. So I'll give you an example. So my mother passed about 6 months ago. I took care of her for about 5 years, kept her in her house, and she announced to everybody around Christmas before she passed that she wanted to die at home. So that says a lot. So she ended up dying at home. So when she did get sick that day, I asked her again, are you sure you don't want me to call the ambulance? She said no. So she was quite intact. So, you know, knowing what your loved one wants is very important. Not what you want, but what they want. Cognition, thinking, just because you age doesn't necessarily mean you have to lose your memory. So dementia, memory loss is not necessarily a normal part of aging. There's certain things you can do to avoid it. One is which is what Dr. Rutland talked about last week, Myra, was controlling your blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is like 160/80, or you're saying things like, I want to manage it naturally, wrong, you don't want to do that, you got to take a pill. It's okay to take a pill. A lot of our medications come from plants. So, but take a pill, because over time, you knock off little bits of your brain, and then you lose your memory, and that's not reversible. So I had a patient come in. She came in from another country, and where they don't have health care. And she had had high blood pressure for several years, and they did not have access to medicine. So her family member brought her in, and her pressure was high, and she had already lost her memory. So I said, well, let's do a CAT scan to see, CT, imaging of her brain, to see how bad it was. There were so many strokes in her brain, it looked like Swiss cheese. It was nothing salvageable. And she was only in her 70s. So that was if her healthcare system was set up differently, that was reversible or preventable. So controlling your blood pressure is very important. Financially, you want to try to get rid of debt before you age. Just a fixed income is really a fixed income. I personally, from what I've seen over the years, don't really believe in retirement. So if you can work, just don't work necessarily in your 9-to-5 job, but maybe do something part-time so you can keep your brain engaged. And then psychosocial. If you can live with a family member, although the studies show that most older people don't want to live with their kids, but try to live nearby, that would be helpful. Okay, almost done. Let's see. So, summary. So our body is a temple, so we get one chance to get it right. The youngest patient I had was, he was 19. Yeah, 19. And I had a drug overdose. And I remember looking at him and I was thinking, wow. So he never woke up. So they end up becoming like organ donors. So, you know, you get one chance to get it right. Eat fruits and vegetables. So for those of us who came in, I'm going to call on one of you, probably Dr. Patton over here, to tell us their assignment. I gave them a vegetable, and I asked them to look up on this website called Medical News Today what the health benefits are of their vegetables. So she has garlic. So you can just stand up and just read a couple things.
It helps with your heart.
So it helps with your heart. Antioxidant.
Antioxidant. It helps with other aging processes. It helps to make you healthy, and it's a good vegetable.
That's right.
To take every day with
Right.
anything.
Right, exactly. So garlic. So I have patients come in who have trouble giving up the salt. So their pressure's really high and their salt intake is high. So I encourage them, I say, try to only use spices that come out of the ground or off a tree. So if the spice says accent, then that doesn't come out of the ground, and there's no spice named accent. Today I learned about a new spice that the patient's going to try to eliminate from her diet. It's called Maggie shrimp. Is that right? Yeah, Maggie shrimp. So I looked it up. So apparently it's like a beef bouillon cube. So it had a ton of salt in it. She said, I only used 2 cubes. I said, well, that's 2 grams of salt. She didn't know it. So we looked it up. And I said, there you go. So she's like, wow. So I'm going to try to get it out of my diet. I said, good. So exercise and lift weights. So weightlifting is very important. I encourage everyone to do it. Right now, the gym memberships are really inexpensive. So if you go to Planet Fitness, you can actually get a free trainer, and they'll actually show you, they have these weightlifting classes and show you, kind of make a program that's appropriate for you. The key is to start low and slow, and so you can build muscle over time. And then aging well starts today. So it doesn't start when you retire at 65 and now I'm going to start going to the gym. No, it starts today. So aging well starts today. The last points are, let's see, maybe that was it. Summary. Yeah, avoid or limit alcohol use and avoid white foods. So I like that because it's an easy way for people to know what a bad carb is and what a good carb is. So as was mentioned last week, whole wheat is okay, but if you have white bread or pasta, what's another, rice. So I have some patients in my practice that are from cultures where they still eat the food of the culture. So they'll have a lot of rice in their diet. So when I tell them they have diabetes and they have to eliminate rice from the diet, now it's a problem. But if you can avoid white foods or limit the amount that you do is really key. And then finally, take your medicines. I can't overemphasize that. It's okay to take a pill. It really is. But take your medications. I remember Pastor Richardson used to always say, look, take your medicines. Take your medicines. So finally, the scripture that says, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. So don't be wise in your own eyes. Really listen to what some of the things we talked about tonight. Try to eat your fruits and vegetables. We have a couple of door prizes that are here. I have one is a Fit Deck, which so if you have to exercise at home, then it gives you sort of what you can use to do at home in order to exercise. Of course, you're going to keep your tape measures. And then the last thing is I wanted to show you this little guy called our kidney. This is really a very important organ. And, there's so many insults on it when our diabetes isn't controlled or our blood pressure isn't controlled. So really, just remember the kidney. It really is about this size. And, but it's very important to you. So lastly, questions. So, and how are we doing on time? You okay? So do we have any questions? Yes.
I have a friend of mine who had gastric bypass years ago. She was like over 300 pounds or something. She had it, and then a few years later, she started putting weight back on again. So it's not, I guess as she discovered, it's not a sure fix for her issues. Her medical, like all the medications she used to take, kind of stopped because of all the health problems she had.
Right. So the gastric bypass is really a way to jumpstart your weight loss journey. And it really is a journey because with that, you're supposed to incorporate healthy eating and exercise. So what happens is, like I had a patient today, she had gastric bypass and I could see the weight. She said she regained 25 pounds. And she said she didn't do the rest of the program, which was eating healthily, fruits and vegetables, and key really is exercise. And I always tell the patients, you know, when you look at a marathon runner, they're not heavy. They're like skinny and they're burning thousands of calories, thousands. And so it takes 3,500 calories to make 1 pound, 3,500. So if you go to like McDonald's or something and they'll have the calories up there. That's why I can say that. So I'm not condemning McDonald's, I just use it as an example. But now these restaurants have to post the calorie count for these foods. So you can just do the math. And if it's 3,500 calories, then a pound is coming along with those calories, and that's just how it is. And so you have to burn, so we just say like 700 calories a day. You're not supposed to lose more than ½ a pound or a pound per week. So one way to do that is to do steps. I've had patients come in, I see the weight gain, they say, but I'm moving around. I said, but the magic number is 10,000 steps in one day. It doesn't have to be at one time, so I'll give you an example. Yeah, that seems like a lot, but I worked at a hospital in Reading, and the hospital, this huge campus, and I said, boy, I'm moving. So I said, I'm gonna put a stepper on one day. 4,000 calories I was putting on, which is 2 miles. 2,000 is 1 mile. I was like, wow, I'm walking 2 miles a day, and it was a huge campus. So can you imagine if you do that, plus exercising, and I would eat a lot, I was ravished, but I never gained. So I said, wow, so yeah, so moving, exercise, and you gotta do it every day. The effects of exercise last about 2 days. So if you have somebody who's like a weekend warrior, I've heard that term, where they don't exercise all week and they try to save it for the weekend, no, that's not gonna do it. It's gotta be like either every other day or every day. Any other questions? Yes?
I have a question up here when we go back to the fruits and vegetables. You know, they have this very popular book about the supplements you can take, fruits and vegetables. What is your opinion on those supplements compared to eating like natural?
Sure. So the Food and Drug Administration doesn't really regulate or check those supplements, so you could be actually just have a sugar pill even though it says it's what they say on the label. So that's the problem with that, is you're really not sure what you're getting, and also you're not sure how much. What we do know is that if you have at least, I think one said 4 fruits, 3 vegetables a day. Now I tell people look at their hand, 5 fruits, 5 vegetables a day, then you're more likely to get all the nutrients that you need. So that answers your question. So the bottom line is it's cheaper, I think, to go with the fruits and vegetables, whole foods, and also you pretty much know what you're getting. So for example, instead of me taking vitamin A, I'll get, I have a juicer now, and I got a deal on Black Friday, so it was like $30. And then I get a bag of carrots, so that's like $2. And I get the ones that are baby carrots because they fit into the machine easier. And then I just turn it on, and out comes the juice. And then I put in an apple. I don't even bother peeling it, and out comes the juice. And the apple sweetens it, and then I just drink it. It's actually very refreshing. And then what I do is I have all the roughage from the carrots, so then I took a dab of sour cream and made a dip. Added some Mrs. Dash, so I get the fiber. Then I used, I had some tortilla chips, and I count this, so you can still have carbs, just quantity. And then that was actually my breakfast. So, you know, the body doesn't care when you eat these vegetables and fruits, as long as you get it in, but it's like so much better. I used to work nights. I found it was much easier for me to go in for my night shift if I had vegetables, a vegetable-based diet, than something heavy like steak or something like that. You have to limit how much red meat you eat. So there is one culture I learned about today. The family was from Bangladesh, and the son was telling me he was concerned because there was a lot of heart disease in his family, but he said they do have, in their culture, red meat is like a staple. I said, well, there's the problem. So he knew it, so I said, for your generation, you probably want to avoid that. If you can. It doesn't mean you can't have red meat. I still have red meat. I make a roast. I usually have red meat about twice a month, and then I'm good. And I'm not going to eat like a whole roast. I'll have like a couple of slices and I'm good. So, but fruits and vegetables, actually just having the whole food. So hopefully that answered your question. Anybody else?
This new trend with, we talked about diabetes and like Triceba and all those, Trulicity and all those appetite suppressants, where people who aren't diabetic but overweight want to take them. What do you say about that?
So I see the premise. So they'll come in. I have patients come in who are not diabetic, they say, I've tried this, I've tried that, now I want Wegovy. First off, I tell them it's an expensive medication under upwards of $1,000-some, and the insurance company most of the time won't pay for it. Now, if they're diabetic, then that would be the go-to medication, because I'd rather help them on their journey to losing weight, which probably contributed to them getting diabetes. But to have it as a weight loss agent, I would say no. Yeah. Yes.
I know a lot of times we like to cook our vegetables till they're tender.
Yeah.
Should they be slightly raw, or how should we?
Right. No, that's a good question. So, you know, the best way to do it is more crunchy, you're probably okay. But yeah, we grew up with the collard greens, and we cook it down. And I remember Pastor Richardson used to say, you know, we cook all the nutrients out of the vegetables when we did that, and that's probably true, because most of the time you don't drink the water. So, but the bottom line is the more crunchy, the better. So what I do is I put it in the microwave. And then so it's still crunchy. And that's how I cook it. Yeah, as opposed to putting in water, and now all the nutrients are being leached out into the water, and we usually strain it. And there go our vitamins down the drain. Yes?
Isn't roasting the vegetables much better? Like the example you were giving about boiling it, throwing the nutrients down with the water. I've switched where I try to roast as many vegetables as I can.
Roasting is good. Yep, roasting is good. The bottom line is you want to keep as much of those nutrients in the vegetable. So roasting is good, microwave. Frozen vegetables are okay. Yeah, because times are hard with money and all. Sometimes it's cheaper. You see 3 for 1, 3 for the price of 1, and they're frozen, even for fruits. You just have to watch the salt content. Most of the time for the frozen, it's not that bad. It's the can. If you have to have canned, then you just rinse them, and then that usually removes the salt, so you don't use the water that it comes in. And because salt is a preservative. So, frozen vegetables are okay. So a lot of times I'll use frozen. I do use the bagged salads now, as long as there's no recall or anything. But I'll use, I do shop at a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods, because most likely they'll have more organic. But I get conventional, which means, the chemicals are okay. Because I'm gonna wash it. So you don't necessarily have to get organic, because it tends to be a lot more expensive. But I'll wash the conventional fruits and vegetables, and it's fine. The important thing is that you include it in your diet. Yes?
Like
Sure. When you juice, all the fiber is removed so that I keep, and that's when I went and made a dip. So you basically are still using the entire vegetable. So smoothies are nice because you're using everything, the fiber, the juices, it's basically ease of use. I would say, usually when I get home at like tonight, I'll go home and make a smoothie because it's easier. It's easier to clean. I can just take the blender apart and just pop it in the juicer. You gotta like take all these little parts, so it's kind of a little bit more labor intensive. But the smoothie is nice because I noticed, particularly in the African American community, there's not enough milk. So when we grew up, we used to drink 3 glasses of milk a day. We didn't have all these choices. But patients will come in, I'll say, what's your dairy intake? They'll say, I put it in my coffee, I put it in my cereal. I said, no, that's, African American people do get osteoporosis, brittle bone disease. And a lot of it is because you don't have milk in your diet. So a milk substitute is almond milk. So I can't drink it makes me gag, it's just too thin. But if I put it in a smoothie, I'm good. So I'll put almond milk, oat milk. Those are great base for, I'll use soy milk. I used to make, I still do, I make bread pudding with soy. And even though it's white bread, I know I'm gonna eat like 1 or 2 servings. Like that's it, I'm not gonna eat the entire thing. I'm done, So sometimes it's okay to eat white bread if you know you're only gonna have a small portion. So if you remember nothing, fruits and vegetables, thank you for your time, and don't forget to lift weights. Yes.
The pound weight, is there a certain number?
Sure. So the key is to start low and slow, because you don't want to hurt yourself. And that's why what I do is I went to, this was kind of funny, I went to the Y and they have a body pump class. So I noticed no one asked us what's a good time to exercise. So a good time is when you will go. That's a good time, really. So I said, it's unlikely that I'll go to the gym after work. It's just the day's too long. So one day I noticed the Holy Spirit was giving me that nudge. I woke up and he was like, just go. So I went to the 5:15 class at the Y, that's what I said. And when I got there, it was like a whole nother world. But I felt so good after the class, so I said, I'm coming back. So they had a body pump class, and it's called Les Mills. And they work all 6 groups of muscles in this 45-minute class. So I started out, I saw this woman in front of me, and she had a tattoo. I said, okay, she's been doing this for a bit. So she was up there, so I said, I'm gonna follow her. I put the weights on that she had. She had 2 5s on either side of a dumbbell. I could barely pick it up. I said, no. So I did a 2-pound weight, and I was able to do the class. So I had 2 pounds. So most of the time you start at like 2. And then I know as they do the class, so you're supposed to exercise, weight lift every other day to give your muscles a break. So 2 pounds would be a good start. If you find that you're on the machine and it still doesn't feel like you have enough resistance, then bump it up. Usually if it's a machine, like I'll do the leg press to build up my quadricep muscles, which are the muscles in your thighs, which helps prevent you from getting that osteoarthritis in your knees that a lot of people have. Then I'll use a leg press. For there, I start at 70 pounds, right? Because it's the legs, and so it's easier to do the leg press. And I'll do 3 sets of 10. Yeah, and then and again, the key is slow. I see people at the gym trying to get through the exercise, so they do it really fast. That's wrong. You're supposed to always have a little bend in the knee, and you take your time, and it's the resistance, that slow movement that actually builds the muscle. So weightlifting is key, and your legs are really the most important organ, in my opinion. The legs and this kidney, this little, with aging. because I have more people come in that fall. And once you fall as an older adult, it's just downhill after that. It really is very difficult to come back from that. So your legs and balance are the key to aging successfully. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Okay. So let me see. So we have our participants. So here's my, there you go. Here you go. You did a great job. Yeah, thank you. So there you go. All righty. Okay, so this is it.
Mm-hmm.